So just the other day, I had an individual who I've been in contact with for a little bit, very nice lady from India. And so she wanted to ask me some questions. So she kind of set up a Q&A. And typically I do equipment inquiries, if you will, for free. But however, she said, "Hey, we can record this if you like, and if it goes well, we can post it." So this is basically a little over 30 minutes, and all I'm doing is I am reading her questions because there is a language barrier there, and she also had some audio issues as well. So she typed her questions into the Zoom chat. I do read the questions out loud, and then I move forward and starting to answer them the way that I see it. You know what I mean? And that's why she reached out to me, because she wants my opinion or my understanding on what these devices are doing and what these devices aren't doing. Again, in the anti-nano space, there's more dogma than there is evidence. And this is what I've been trying to do since I've been in this so-called space, is bring more evidence. So here we go. We're going to go right into the Q&A. We're going to jump right into the first question. I hope you enjoy. Their first question is, how do we know those devices are removing toxins? What I started doing a long time ago when I first got introduced to these devices. Now, the one who introduced me to these devices, his name is Tony Pantaresco. We were once extremely good friends, talked on a regular basis, done multiple interviews with each other. So my work started leading me down a much different path than my peers and colleagues were currently on. Again, based on evidence. So nonetheless, I'll just put it politely. I moved on. I will tell you that all of these findings are my findings. Nobody else, what we call so-called, believes what I believe, but my system isn't based on belief. It is based on evidence, and time-dependent research, time-dependent observations. So what I have noticed over a long period of time, because I look at biology, and what do I mean biology? I look at certain elements of our biology, which is blood, urine, sweat, tears, things like that. That's what I mean biology. So what do I see that has changed when I started using these devices? Well, at first, when I first started using these devices, I noticed the load of debris was up astronomically in my sweat, in my urine, and in my blood, because these are all avenues of getting rid of debris or foreign non-native materials that are not supposed to be in your biology. And so that's one thing that I have noticed, that this is how we tell that these devices help. Why do they help? Well, because these materials, these foreign non-native materials, are biomimetic. And this is something that people need to look into, because the industry, they use this term in such a way as if it's wholesome, as if it's good for you, because your biology does not recognize their materials. In other words, no rejection process. So that is not a good thing when we utilize systems of so-called healthcare that introduce biomimetic, and that's just at the medical level. I'm not even talking about the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat. I'm talking about biomimetic through the industry itself that distributes the biomimetics. So the dentistry industry is what introduced biomimetics. The health industry is what introduced biosimilar, bioidentical, and biologics. You see what I'm saying? They love this
Mhm.
term of bio. Again, the load increase is how I know, and is how I have trended and tracked this this thing. So over 5 years, especially when I started doing looking at blood and urine and sweat under the microscope. Now, at any given day, you'll have foreign materials, elements that we can measure off of our, or observe from our body. But when I first started using the devices, I noticed the load increased again astronomically. And then over time, is the load decreases to what I would call baseline, because again, our environments and just our lifestyles of things that we can't see and things we cannot control are infiltrating our biology just through, just sheer proximity or breathing and drinking, consuming, and all those things. Not even talking about what things people inject to them. Okay, so that's how I know that these devices work, because they help your biology identify the biomimetic, the foreign non-native materials. So the next question is, from my understanding, the liver, bile, poop is the major detox mechanism. Did you notice significant changes there? Also, does the liver contain higher concentration of nanotechnology? And so I kind of answered that question with the detox mechanism or the routes. So your ENT is one route, your ears, nose, and throat, like mucus and all that kind of stuff. You will, and and that was another thing that I did check. I check my mucus, I check ear drainage, whenever you get it or whatever. And now I and a lot of my clients, not all of my clients, but a lot of my clients have scaled down their mucus production. They have scaled down their drainage out of their ears. They have scaled down the drainage out of their nose, and their sweat doesn't necessarily have a stench to it anymore. My sweat at one time was horrific, and now it's not. Again, I've been using these devices, I think, at a very high level because I am studying biology constantly. I like looking at physical evidence of my biology. Again, my sweat, my urine, my blood, and mucus and stuff like that. And so that's how we know that your body is able to identify and tag the non-native material, which is the biomimetic. That is just the term I use for synthetic biology. And the word nanotech is what gets us in trouble. It gets us in trouble because I can't see nanotechnology through my microscope. That's the first thing that people will push back on you. Well, you got a microscope, you can only see at the micro level. Not understanding that these materials, wherever they start out from on the size spectrum, they usually develop over time. And then when they get to a certain size, obviously, what can I do? I can see that with my microscope, dark field and bright field on a compound microscope. And and so that's how I know that these devices work, is the evidence. I follow the evidence nonstop. And that is something that a lot of people in this arena of so-called anti-nano detoxing, they don't do that. There's almost nobody in this arena or field that does what I do. There's a few, and I know them personally. I literally know these people personally. Those are the other ones who do it, but nobody
Hmm.
else in this circle or this field or so-called field, anti-nano detoxing or whatever, do what we do, specifically
Hmm.
me. Is
Okay.
this your next question? Has there been other health benefits or other unrelated diseases that are being cured with those devices? So obviously, I'm not going to use that word cured because there
Okay.
nothing is cured these days, really.
Hmm.
And plus, I am not what you call a healthcare provider or a healthcare professional with
Hmm.
so-called medical credentials or license behind my name. I'm just a man who has observed things, and that's all. That's all I am. I'm a observationalist who documents endlessly what I observe. And so my observation is, with a lot of my clients who have several different so-called blood disorders. Some of them are low platelets, what is called thrombocytopenia, um, and there are others who have low hemoglobin, and some of my clients who have the low platelets also have low hemoglobin, profoundly low. Like they 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 lived in critically low platelets and critically low hemoglobin and function in society.
Mm.
Sometimes before they met me, they would get short-winded. Well, that makes sense because they have low hemoglobin. And so if something happens during the course of the day where you're critically low hemoglobin, which you have become accustomed or acclimated to operating in, it's no different than a dialysis patient, a renal failure patient. Sometimes they are typically on, supplemental oxygen because their chemistry is so messed up. They usually also have issues with fluid in their lungs. So that fluid in their lung makes it harder for them to breathe. So they have to use supplemental oxygen. So sometimes what is normal for them can get them in trouble. No different than my clients who had the blood disorders, specifically the ones low hemoglobin. Now, I had a multitude of with low hemoglobin, but I only had a handful that had low hemoglobin and low platelets at the same time. And so these clients noticed over time that whatever was the underlying so called issue that was preventing their platelet count to be normal or the hemoglobin count to be normal, it started to elevate slowly and incrementally over weeks and months. So that is the answer to that particular question, that there have been a multitude of people who have utilized these devices responsibly, and they have noticed that some of these blood disorders over time started to correct. Again, these conditions were chronic, and over the span of 1 year, these chronic conditions dissipated over that time. Okay, so the next question is, what kind of client comes to me? There is no one type. So from within the United States, I have what we call the average citizen, just somebody who literally just goes to work and comes home, doesn't work in the medical field, has no real knowledge of biology or pathophysiology or anything like that. And they just so happen to come across my content. Somehow somebody shared it with them, or they just somehow organically come across my content because I have a playlist. I have a synthetic biology playlist on BitChute, that a lot of times in my videos I would encourage people to go look through that because it's almost 5 years of evidence.
Mm.
And in that synthetic biology, I have talked about many times about these people with blood disorders. My next tier of clients are in academia and or medical professional. So I will put academia and medical professional together. So I've had quite a few private clinics reach out to me. The majority of the time, it's the owner that will reach out to me, and from time to time, a partner of the owner will set up the first consult. I also have spoken to many department heads in the medical facility world, such as radiology and L&D. I've had a couple people who actually are not CEOs, but sit on the board of their hospitals. We'll say a couple rungs on the ladder, if you will, below the chairman of the board on their hospitals, universities, department heads, not just department heads in science, but like department heads in engineering. And the clientele is kind of spread out again, mostly in the United States, then the EU, Australia, and New Zealand, kind of in that order. Now, actually, I would probably say now, in the beginning, it was the EU, but now I would probably say United States, Australia, New Zealand, and then the EU now. Her next question is, are we able to prove this tech is in a person's biology without a microscope, like capturing data fields or magnet, I'm guessing a magnetism or something similar, or the two devices are the best way? So again, the two devices won't help you detect anything per se unless unless you have both devices. And what I say is, okay, one device, the what we call the spike, can demonstrate to you where you have tissue coherence and where you don't have
Okay.
tissue
Mm,
coherence, or what we call muscle engagement or muscle twitch, because it's delivering pulse voltage to that tissue. And so you have to always think about continuity. So if I put one spike lead pad, which is delivering pulse voltage on my left calf, and then I put the next delivery pad that's delivering pulse voltage to my right calf, I should feel immediately, I should feel pulse voltage, muscle twitch, muscle engagement in both calves at the same time. That's continuity.
yes.
That means you've placed it on 2 points, and the 2 points connect. Your neural networks, your CNS, your electrical pathways are all coherent. They operate, they function, if you will. If they don't, that means there's an obstruction in that circuit. And I hate to call us a circuit, but that's what it is at the end of the day. It's a circuit, it's a complete circuit. That shows us continuity because you get muscle engagement. But most people today, they don't have that. They don't have that initially. And that's how we can tell with the devices themselves that these devices are at minimum doing something if we don't even have knowledge of what it's doing. So if a layperson were to find either mine or somebody else's content that shows you how to build these things, and they're savvy enough to understand to how what they're trending, what they're doing, right? They notice, okay, when I first started doing this, it would take me 20 to 30 minutes for it to get muscle engagement in my feet, in my calves, in my quads,
Mhm.
or in my hamstrings, in my lower body. But my upper body, which again, you have a different resistance factor in your upper body versus your lower body. Regardless of the resistance factor in your lower extremities, most people today, that is where they're the most compromised, is in their lower extremities as far as the
Mm,
neuroconductiveness goes. So that's what that spike can do, is help you identify the areas that you need to focus on with the triangle. The triangle is the only device that I have seen so far that can allow you to regain those neuroconductive pathways that are obstructed, hijacked, whatever you want to call it. I mean, everybody has
mm,
an idea or a hypothesis about what it is. I just call it biomimetic or synthetic biology. There is a parallel biology going up in everyone. Everyone who walks and breathes on Earth is being contaminated with synthetic biology.
mm.
Everyone. There's no one who is escaping this. That's the thing that people have to understand. So getting back
Oh,
to the tissue issue, you start using the devices, well, the triangle, you've already identified where your neuroconductive pathways are the worst, which would most likely be from your bottom of your foot all the way up to your hamstring. You start using the devices or the triangle below the waist, and then over weeks, months, you should start to notice if it took you 20 minutes to get the tissue engagement should improve over time. Let's just say 3 months
mm,
time. I would expect, because this is how it worked for me, it took me 30 minutes when I first started utilizing the spike. It took me 30 minutes to feel tissue engagement, muscle engagement below my waist. 3 months I was looking at maybe close to 15 to 20 minutes improvement time. Then I kept going with it and I kept going with it. And over time, less than a minute. And now I'm at a point now where it's instant, that I instant stimulation from the spike device, where again, when I first started out, it was 30 minutes just to get muscle engagement. And this is also where a lot of people, if they build it themselves, they think they potentially think that their device is defective. And then I've even had clients who said the device was defective because they couldn't feel anything. I was like, no, it's not
Mm,
the device, it's you. Then again, that sometimes brings up arguments. But moreover, the people who build them, they get discouraged because they believe that they build a defective device and it's not defective. It's just their skin. Their skin
mm,
isn't necessarily their own anymore, and that's the problem that people don't recognize, is that they're losing connection to their tissue, because that's just the game that we're living in, this weird matrix game. But whatever it is, it's not a game to us, it's life. But something's going
mm,
on that people ignore, or they just don't even realize it's happening because it's so incremental, and they don't know how to test their body to see what's
mm.
going on with their body. All they know is, a lot of people know that, hey, I have a chronic condition,
Okay.
and they go to an authority figure, and an authority figure will tell them what their chronic condition is, and then the authority figure will give them a plan, a so-called healthcare plan, that will not necessarily heal the condition, but will mask the condition until the condition gets so bad you can't mask it anymore, and then you become a critical patient. That's how the healthcare system works. And so this is
Mm,
where I try to help people see if they can self help themselves through it. That would be one way with the devices without microscopy, that you would
mm,
be able to, again, trend. It's trackable, it's measurable. And every time you repeat it, it gets better. So that's one way with the devices themselves. You will be able to determine that these devices are working for you and creating a better um, body. Like, your body is physically getting better, as far as the neuroconductive pathways. Now, are you actually getting better? That would be the next thing. Like, do you feel physically better, well, versus feeling sluggish or ill
mm,
most of the time? So, in short, once you make contact with your skin, 2 points of contact, and that time domain goes from 30 minutes to 10 minutes to 5 minutes, that is improvement. That is how the layman can see that these devices are working for them. So, now moving on to your next question. What are the risks to using these devices, especially in the case we are making them ourselves? How do we mitigate those risks? So, if you build these things yourself, the best thing you can do is, wherever you make a splice, a cut, is use some form of connector, or what you call butt connector, where you're connecting two lines together. These particular type of heat shrink connectors also provide some element of waterproofing, which, if moisture gets into these places where people make splices or cuts or whatever you want to call it, corrosion happens, and then your device doesn't work anymore. So the main thing is to get your device properly connected. So this is an inline connector. This is a terminal connector, or a spade connector. And this is a spade. So certain things you can hook up together. And the most importantly is to get you junction boxes of some sort. So where you have the triangle on one end, or the spike on one end, and you have your power supply on the other. And then you can drill these things out to however you like. And you can put your flasher in there and have it securely connected. That's the best thing you can do to make your device safe. And so
okay.
you asked another question about the higher frequency and what is. What is your logic? We want low voltage and low pulse rate, and that's what all my devices are set up on, is low voltage and low pulse rate.
Power supply, flasher,
I do that again because I observe biology, specifically blood. And the blood is the most sensitive. The blood is the easiest
Oh,
benchmark to observe because it's so sensitive to your environment or what you're doing to yourself. For instance, all these people who walk around with these modulating devices, aka your phone, your tablet, your laptop, your watch, all of these devices are emitting powerful signals that modulate almost like a reciprocator saw. And you know what kind of damage a reciprocator saw does. It does the same type of damage to your blood. This is observable, measurable, and repeatable, but yet people don't look at that. They don't look at biology. If you looked at your biology on a regular basis, wielding one of these weapons, you would never touch it again. So the same with these devices, specifically the triangle, you don't want that rapid pulse rate as far as the magnetic fields go, because the triangle puts out pulsed magnetic fields.
mm,
And high rate, high voltage, high amperage pulse rates will interfere with your blood. And it's
very true.
it's easily observable. Easily.
Mm,
I've done it on myself many times over. And that's why I build my devices the way they are. And that's why I
mm,
also in my triangle I put half the magnets that my once upon a time colleagues and peers put 80 plus or 80. I put 40. Tons of magnets themselves can interfere with your blood. I also know with the people who use the bigger devices who have 24-volt power supplies going to them, which does a couple of things. It may increase the pulse rate if you're doing it a traditional way with a flasher mechanism, and also it will overheat the wire. And so if you're using, regular speaker wire, it could overheat the wire and cause it to just melt. And then now you have a defective device. And again, in the very beginning, I used to do the same thing. I was doing what was considered the so called standard in this arena. And I had
mm,
devices that would melt. And I was like, why am I sticking with this? Because this design fails. And
mm,
so I redesigned or changed the format of this design. One, to not overheat, and two, not to overwhelm my blood. We already live in an electrified environment that already causes stacking events. We already traverse through a world, like I said before, everybody is carrying multiple modulating devices. So we're getting secondhand modulation on a regular basis when we're out in public. Because a lot of us who are more educated and care more about our biology and our body today because we need to survive for our children. Which brings me back to the devices, not to overwhelm our biology with high outputs, high power bands, and rapid pulse rates. One thing you mentioned, everyone is getting exposed. Are there people like multiple injected who have had higher loads, or sometimes the uninjected people also getting a higher load? Is there any pattern that you have seen in these loads? So here's the thing is like this is the most argued amongst my peers and amongst people in general. So if you get on Facebook, if you get on you or any of the social medias, everybody is an expert. Everybody has become an expert in so-called shedding. Everybody's an expert in what you need to take.
for all the boogeyman issues we face today.
But what I have noticed, again, time dependent with biology, and not just biology, with 12 lead recognition. Again, utilizing the skills that I have learned over a 20-year career. And in that 20-year career, I was a firefighter paramedic. Again, I told you I was an instructor
Mm.
for the region, not just for my fire department, but I was an instructor for the region for a while. And I also worked in the ER for the local ER for almost maybe 10 plus years as a functional paramedic in the ER. So my volume of experience is through the roof, if you will, on just contact, patient contact, if you will. Again, they were patient contacts when I was in the field, when I was with the fire department, when I was with the ER. I also worked as a part-time paramedic for a rural county nearby. So again, my volume of patient contacts through the roof. And now it's just client contact now, not patient, because I don't have patients, because I'm not a provider anymore. I'm just a so-called consultant. But either way, the things that have changed really is nothing. I still document, I still observe, I still measure, I still trend. And so that's a big thing you would do as a paramedic. You trend the outcome. You have an expected outcome, and then you trend it as it's getting near your expected outcome. But no,
Okay.
I have not seen any difference whatsoever in the biology of injected versus not injected. The only thing that
Mm.
I have seen, which is difficult to prove today, and a lot of people don't understand, is the telecommunications portion of it. That's the part that people don't understand. Also, in my career, I was on the most advanced mobile telecommunication asset in the United States, in the
Mm.
entire United States. It was at the time, there was three teams like ours, but my team was the most advanced in the United States at the time when I was on that team from 2012 to 2021 at some point. I was removed from that team for identifying a discoverable, unknown, unnamed signal with a system called Blue Masked Sky or Blue Sky Systems. And I was able to
Mm.
identify in January 2021 a signal that was emitting from our people who took this injection. Our people got this injection slash infestation in mid December of 2020. So by mid January 2021, that's when I started picking up a signal coming from them in the 2.4 gigahertz range, discoverable as BLE or BT, Bluetooth Low Energy or Bluetooth Classic. But that's
Understood.
the main difference that I've seen. But again, a lot of people who are not telecommunication savvy, it doesn't mean anything to them when you can isolate a person in the middle of the woods and show them
Mm.
that they have a BLE signature. It doesn't mean anything to
Mm.
anybody. So it's meaningless to show most people that these days. Meaningless.
Mm.
Again, like as far as if you can capture digital packages or packages, which pretty much all BLE signals or Bluetooth
Mm.
signals will have data packages. I have had a multitude of friends who've captured the package, captured the data, not accessible to anybody that I've seen so far. And I've worked with some of the smartest people, most intelligent people in software, network, and all that stuff. They cannot crack these packets.
Oh my God. Encrypted.
Nobody's been able to crack the packets. No, whatever is truly going on is beyond our imagination. I don't think we
Mm.
can, because we're not sadistic. Our people in general aren't sadistic and twisted, and they don't
Mm.
have the training that our adversaries have. Our adversary is highly
Mm.
trained, beyond our imagination. All right, the next and I believe the final question is, what do you think the nanotech is in general by looking at all of the structures themselves? I mean, there's certain structures that, if we look through the nanotech or the nanotechnology literature, there's certain structures that we can see that is utilized within the industry. You could see certain lattice forms. You can see certain, I guess you would say, tubes. And again, some people call them nanotubes, but again, we can't see in the microscopy level. You can't see a true blue nanotube. Now you might be able to see certain tubes when they I guess you would say assemble. Over time you can see that these structures go from basically invisible to your sight, and it could take days, it could take minutes, it could take hours. This work is all based on observation, and it's
Mm.
not quick. It's not This is not quick work. This is not quick observation. But yeah, there are a multitude of structures that you can see if you go into the nano literature and the nanosciences, and you can see their graphs or their electron microscopy and or some of their microscopy of the bigger structures. You will be able to see those structures from time to time in your urine, in your sweat, or in your blood. So this concludes this little Q&A, and I hope it was beneficial to somebody. And if you want to build these devices yourself, you can look in the description box and you'll see the videos, my videos, of showing you how to build these things. Again, I hope this helps. Until next time.